Okay, we ready, everyone? Okay, let's do it.
Starting the meeting now.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the May 19th, 2021 Reno City Planning Commission meeting. We'll start the meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance, and I believe Commissioner Valto will lead us, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Michelle, can we please have roll call?
Yes. John Marshall,
Present.
JD Draculich,
Here.
Peter Gower,
Here.
Mark Johnson,
Here.
Arthur Munoz. You're muted, but he's here.
Here.
Alex Felto.
Here.
Thank you. Kathleen Taylor.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Item number 3, public comment. Michelle, do we have any public comment?
We did receive some emails for future agenda items. There is one voicemail that we'll play for you if you just give us 1 minute.
Okay.
My name is Lori Marin. I live and operate a business in Ward 1. I'm calling to encourage you, the City of Reno Planning Commission, to include a land acknowledgement statement to all agendas for all of your meetings. Reno, Nevada sits on the unceded lands of the Numu and Washishu people. They are the rightful stewards of the stolen lands in which we now reside. This land nourishes us and brings our communities together. I encourage you to extend your appreciation for the opportunity to live, work, and grow on their territory, and to learn from their example and experience. You may read more about the people at rsic.org as well as many other sources. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. That was the only voicemail that we received, and no other public comment was received for this item.
Okay, thank you. We will close public comment and move on to item number 4. This is for public hearings. Item 4.1 is a possible recommendation to City Council case number LDC 21-00051 Moya Industrial Complex rezoning. This is a request for a zoning map amendment from single family residential to industrial. Do we have a presentation from the applicant?
We will. We'll have Matthew and Grace coming in, so it'll just be 1 moment. Matt, can you hear us?
I can, yes.
Okay. When you're ready, you can share your screen to do your presentation, and then you'll have 15 minutes to present.
One second, please.
Okay. If you need help, we do have your presentation, and we can bring it up.
If you wouldn't mind, that would be great. I've got it pulled up too. I don't know how I can pull it up on both screens to be able to present.
Okay, just stand by for just 1 moment.
Thank you.
And then once we bring it up, just cue us when you're ready to switch screens, okay? And we'll advance it for you.
Thank you. Okay.
Just give us 1 minute. Hang on just a second.
I wanted to thank the commission. I appreciate your guys' time. It's a pretty unique time. So this is my first presentation on Zoom. I've been doing this for about 25 years, and it's pretty interesting dynamic, but we'll get through it all.
Can everybody see the PowerPoint presentation? Yes, okay. So Matt, you can start whenever you're ready.
Do you want a Moya Industrial Complex located on Moya Drive? Next slide, please. Zoning amendment, it's 13.31 acres. It's currently zoned single family 8, and we're requesting industrial I. Next slide, please.
Hey, Matt, can I interrupt for just one sec?
Please.
Can we have you go to, at the top, the display settings,
Yes.
and then the drop-down arrow and duplicate, yep, that one there.
Okay. Does that work?
And now we've lost you. Let's try that again.
You know what, why don't I can do the screen share if that's easier for the collective group. Why don't I just, if that's okay with you, Grace, I'll just do a quick screen share. And
Perfect.
it'll be easier. Can everybody see that? Is that good? Okay. I don't know why I just kicked us off. Technology at its finest. Okay. Is that better, Angela?
You are, just hit enable content and then,
Yeah, gotcha.
yep, and then you should be good to go.
Perfect. 3.31 acres, again, single family 8, currently zoned to industrial I, per the current proposed master plan zoning. It's the north side of Moya Boulevard, south of Silver Lake, south of Resource Drive, west of Red Baron Boulevard and Sunset Breeze Drive. If you're familiar, I believe it's Sally's kind of hair and beauty products. It's just to the roughly east, right along the shore or backside of Silver Lake open space and along the city's canal section. But with that, you can kind of see the project site as it's located off of the lake and right on Moya Drive. Again, the existing single family 8 proposed to industrial. Kind of see how the Moya Drive dissects the industrial current sector with the current residential sector. Again, our project site, the master plan land use is consistent with the request that we're asking for with industrial. And then project considerations, zoning. I'm just going to move this. Okay. Zoning is again consistent with the master plan. Current single family SF8 zoning does not conform with the current approved master plan. Industrial use is consistent with the surrounding area as it's dissected by Moya Drive, and future uses will be subject to subsequent reviews and obviously any sort of approvals. So. Any questions, concerns, answers that I may be able to answer for the Planning Commission? I'm going to pull up the actual map. I think that'll be probably best.
Thanks, Matt. I think we'll have Grace present her presentation, and then we'll move through questions of you or Grace.
Thanks, Kathleen. It's great to see you too, by the way.
Good to see you too.
Matt, can you take your PowerPoint presentation down?
Yes.
Thank you. Grace, are you ready to go?
Yes, let me pull up my screen. All right, can you guys see that? Okay. Perfect.
Yes.
All right, Matt did a great job summarizing the project, and so I'll just keep it as short and sweet as possible, and then I'll be available for questions as well. So good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Grace Whited, Assistant Planner for the record, here to talk about LDC 21-00051 Moya Industrial Complex rezoning. The 13.31 acre site's located on the northwest side of Moya Boulevard, approximately 140 feet south of Resource Drive. So like Matt said, the applicant is requesting a zone change from single family 8 units per acre to industrial, which is consistent with the master plan. As you can see, the site is adjacent to single family zone property, which would trigger an entitlement for any future development. The properties to the northeast of the site are zoned industrial, and this PUD to the southwest of the site is the IDI Stead Business Center, and that's intended to be restricted to an industrial park. I think that it's important to point out the zone change would be consistent with the master plan land use designation, and the second phase of that Title 18 Land Development Code update anticipates a review and reconciliation process for zoning inconsistencies. And so this would bring the zoning designation into conformance prior to the city doing so. A majority of the site is in an AE flood zone. Code does allow for development in a flood zone, and this has, and we have standards to mitigate the flood risk. There's also a major drainage way that goes through the site. This would also trigger an entitlement for any future development. The drainage way has been, it has been previously disturbed, and so code does allow for that, and it has mitigation measures for that as well. We received one public comment in favor of the zone change, but concerned with future development because of the bird population within the drainage way. And we received one comment opposed to the project due to concerns with potential traffic congestion. In conclusion, staff can make all of the findings and recommends approval of the zoning map amendment. And that's my slideshow, and I'm available for questions.
Thanks, Grace. Commissioners, let's do disclosures. Commissioner Draculich.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Familiar with the site and received and read the emails.
Commissioner Marshall.
Same disclosures.
Commissioner Gower.
Same disclosures.
Commissioner Velto.
Same disclosures.
Where did Commissioner Munoz go? Am I just not seeing?
I think he had to reboot his computer.
Okay. Commissioner Taylor, same disclosures. Michelle, do we have any public comment?
We did receive 2 emails for this project. I believe one was in favor and one was opposed. No voicemails were received, and that's it for public comment.
Okay, we will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for questions of either the applicant or Grace. Who'd like to start? Commissioner Marshall?
Thank you, Grace. I'm sorry, you used a phrase I'm not certain I catch, but you said that these projects would be entitled. Did you mean there would be a hearing before they could be entitled?
Yeah, and the reason I didn't say which entitlement is because it depends on what they choose to do. So they would trigger it for multiple reasons, the drainage way and then the residential adjacency. The residential adjacency would be
Okay.
a site plan review.
I got it. I just wanted to make sure I understood what you were referring to. So not the actual entitlement, but the need for a hearing. Thank you. I don't have any other questions. I have a comment, but I can say that for discussion.
Commissioners, other questions? I don't see any questions. So Commissioner Marshall, would you like to just lead us into a discussion?
Yeah, just roll right into it. I mean, to me, this one, you know, actually I would be interested in Commissioner Munoz's comments on developing right on the lake and on a parcel that has been consistently flooded, it seems like in the past. But what's being asked is to change the zoning, not necessarily entitle any particular project. So I don't know, trying to think through the consequences of the zone change as opposed to any development. And I don't know which designation is more flexible in terms of actually planning a project for the site. You know, we tend to be seeing the industrial designations in this area, and it seems to be indicated in the staff report that or maybe it's the next one, a warehouse, but that seems to be the use of most of the industrial land or the recent development of it. And that doesn't seem to really be able to fit with the portions that are potentially developable here. But I'm not certain if that's our concern at this point. So I don't know, those are my just thoughts looking at this one, and I appreciate any fellow commissioner comments in response.
This is Commissioner Belto. Commissioner Marshall, I appreciate that perspective. I tend to think that if we're going from something that would place people's housing potentially at risk in a flood zone to something that puts businesses at risk, I'm a little more lenient in that change. Is that kind of what you're getting at when you're saying which is more likely to have?
I guess I'm thinking more of what is given the configuration of the parcel. You know, it's got that skinny leg on one side, and then most of the area, developable area, is on the kind of southwestern side of the parcel. And is that, you know, but that also from the view that I don't know if it was in the applicant's presentation or staff's, but you know, you could tell that water is, you know, and that looked like, I can't tell whether that was when at the highest flooding of the lake, but I don't know which use is more adaptable to maybe only have development around the edge of the property, and if that's something that we should be considering at this point. I mean, I assume that if housing is approved, it's done safely.
Grace, this is just a recommendation to City Council for a zone change though, right?
Yes.
We're not really looking at a project, and the master plan land use designation is industrial. So I understand what we're talking about, but it's hard to determine what project there is if there's not really a project yet. We talk about this again and again.
Can I just bring up a quick point to your question or maybe potential concern, John? Because it sounds like those are civil concerns, not zoning concerns. And I want to respect the Planning Commission space in its entirety. But the civil concerns clearly have been addressed on the industrial side. There's a significant amount of development, and RTC's got that road being impacted and developed in its short term and budget here plan moving forward. So at some point, I just want to, I guess I'd like some clarity from the Planning Commission.
So Matt, hold on just a second. I'm going to ask Commissioner Marshall if he has a question that he'd like to ask you. So we're in order here, but I appreciate your comments. So
yeah, I appreciate his comments as well. I think we do have the responsibility to designate the appropriate zoning and to determine whether or not the existing zoning or your requested zoning is more appropriate given the various policies in the master plan, et cetera. So I understand what you're saying, but I respectfully disagree with your ultimate conclusion. But yeah, that's all I had. And I'm only asking these questions because Michelle said I had to be on time and only then could I ask questions. Otherwise I would have been late and I wouldn't have been asking questions. So you guys can thank Michelle for all the questions I'm gonna be asking tonight.
wow. I think he might have been late though.
Madam Chair.
Is that why you didn't get the link? I'm just kidding, you guys. Commissioners, do we have other questions?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson, I just, going back to the zoning question for Commissioner Marshall, I think it's interesting because I do remember when we did the master plan update, there was a big push and a lot of discussion about trying to identify industrial land use in the city. That was a big push, and there was a lot of areas that were zoned to accommodate that. It's interesting now, several years later, where I think the master plan designation that was probably not industrial prior to the master plan, although I can't say that for certain. It would be an interesting way of looking at it now, considering the shortage that we're having seems to be with available land for housing as opposed to available land for industrial. So looking at this from purely a alignment of the zoning with the master plan, it's really a matter of timing. I think if this would have come before us, you know, had this come before us closer to when the master plan was put through, industrial would have certainly been the way to go. But I guess to Commissioner Marshall's concern from a zoning standpoint, in looking through the table of allowed uses, there are a number of uses allowed in the industrial zoning that are smaller in nature, from retail to office developments, and several of them that aren't actually allowed in housing. So while I agree with the concerns in terms of the usable space for a large format warehouse, I do see lots of opportunities for allowable uses in the industrial zone that may not be what we're typically thinking of. So from that mind, just to follow up on both your questions and the applicants, I look at this as really the result of where we were going with the master plan several years ago, as opposed to where we're at now. So that's, you know, and then just sort of circling back to this being an alignment with the master plan. So unless we want to reopen that discussion based on industrial versus housing, which I don't, I think that's the way I'm looking at this project. So thank you for allowing me, Madam Chair.
Other discussion, commissioners?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Munoz. I know the area well. I'm over there numerous times a week. That is a flood zone, like Commissioner Marshall said, but that is on the very outside edge. And I've been over in this area for 20 years, and it's happened once when we had the big, huge problem. So for the zone changing, housing and everything in the area is compatible, other than the gigantic warehouse next to it. I don't have any issues with this as being a Ward 4 resident, and we need more. And like Commissioner Johnson said, we need more land for houses. We're struggling for that. We have plenty out here for warehouses, and warehouses are going up. New one seems monthly. So, and I think our next 4.2 has exactly what we're going to see that a couple miles away. So for me, I'm all for the zone change here. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Commissioner Munoz. Other questions or discussion or a motion?
Ready to make a motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Gower.
In the case of LDC 21-00051, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to recommend that City Council approve the zoning map amendment by ordinance, and I can make all the findings.
Great, thank you. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Velto, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, Michelle, will you help us with a vote, please?
Yes. Kathleen Taylor,
Yes.
John Marshall,
Yes.
JD Draculich,
Yes.
Peter Gower,
Yes.
Mark Johnson,
Yes.
Arthur Munoz,
Yes.
Alex Felto.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Okay, moving on to item 4.2. This is case number LDC 21-00053 Mount Limbo. This is a request for a special use permit for grading of cuts greater than 20 feet. Michelle, do we have a presentation from the applicant, please?
Yes, we have Carrie on the line, and I believe Heather's coming in as well. So Carrie, when you're ready, You can bring up your PowerPoint presentation and begin. You'll have 15 minutes.
Great. Thank you for having us this evening. I'm Carrie Rohrmeyer for the record. I'm here on behalf of the Mount Limbo Special Use Permit request on behalf of Avenue 55. And I'm joined tonight with representatives from the development team, including John Browning here from Tectonics Design Group for representing engineering. So like you mentioned in the previous case, we're here on an agenda item that is a warehouse, but specifically we're looking to do a special use permit for grading that results in results in fills greater than 10 feet in height. This is a vacant parcel just under 11.5 acres. And it's currently zoned, IC with a master plan designation of industrial. So it's an allowed by right use for a warehouse. The applicants have a project in mind with just about 167,000 acre warehouse. So not as big as the Makita warehouse to the south or the Sage Point 8 project that's across Mount Limbo Street to the west. And then we have Parks Greenway open space and Swan Lake to the east. So that's the general vicinity. We feel like it fits in very well. It complies with all land use designations. And here's a site plan. The truck court has been put to the rear of the building and the building brought closer to the street front, which is a nice design. It accommodates 37 truck spaces, 84 vehicle spaces. We'll add new sidewalk and extensive landscaping where there's currently none. The stormwater retention meets the volumetric mitigation ratio for the city of Reno at 1.3 to 1. Conditions 4, 5, and 6 in the staff report mitigate grading during the construction phase and during the long-term phase of the project. So how the parcel is laid out, we have no choice but to come before you. About half of the site, the front half of the site, is generally gentle sloping, but particularly the southeast corner drops off to about 70-foot drop in elevation. So to accommodate any development on this site, a special use permit is needed for cuts and fills. So how the landscape will be treated is with 4-to-1 and 2-to-1 slope treatments, consistent with revegetation requirements and natural contouring so that it has an appearance of not a man-made slope. We've worked with staff to come up with mitigation to make the project very safe for neighboring properties. Everything will be contained on site. Here's the slope map. You can see that retention basins are used, not detention basins, at the rear of the site to catch anything prior to leaving the parcel. So it should be in better condition than in its natural state. The elevation is a contemporary industrial design. I've included the cross sections just so you can see what the natural slope looks like compared to the built out slope with the building atop. And then just to give you a sense of where we are in proximity to flood elevation. So the parcel itself sits about 50 feet higher than Swan Lake. And at its nearest point to the 100-year flood elevation, we have 800 feet of parks, open space, and greenway, a parcel with that zoning as a protective mitigation before acting as a buffer before reaching Swan Lake. I'm here for questions. Again, the consultant team is here. We're here after staff gives their presentation, and we've had a really good experience working with the city of Reno. So we concur with the staff report and appreciate your time.
Thank you, Carrie. Heather, do you have a presentation?
Yes, good evening, I do. Heather Manzo, Associate Planner. I'm hoping that Michelle can drive on her end, but if not, then I'll go ahead and try from my side. Right, if we can just have a moment, please.
Hang on just one second.
Okay. And while Michelle's pulling that up, the applicant did a really good job of explaining what the request is before you today. Essentially, the request is for the fills and the special use permit, and that's it. As Carrie had mentioned, the use is allowed by right. However, in order to get a use developed on the site, fills are necessary. So with that, if we could please go to slide number 3. Thank you. Okay, so the main issues that we were looking at when we analyzed this project are compatibility of the proposed grading with surrounding properties. Essentially, it's the Swan Lake and PGOS zoned parcels to the north and to the east. And then to make sure that the site has been designed to adequately hold what is necessary as far as stormwater going through the site and to mitigate any potential impacts to the Swan Lake Basin. Next slide, please. And so as Carrie had already kind of gone over, the grading has been designed to do as little as possible while still getting a buildable site. A lot of the fills are really necessary because Mount Limbo sits at a different level than the western portion of the site. And so the grading is essentially necessary to get first access and then also to get a pad to develop the property. We did work with the applicant to move the grading on the eastern side of the project as far out of those 30% slopes shown in red as possible. And the design of the drainage features have been located in a place where they can easily be maintained and accessed in the future. So they are going to be as close as they can be to the proposed parking lot and paved areas to get maintenance folks and vehicles there for long-term maintenance purposes. Next slide, please. And so this is your fills map. The dark red essentially notes the deepest fills. Grading's been proposed, as I mentioned, to maximize development potential of the site. The engineered slopes won't be visible from the public right-of-way. However, because we do have a slope that then feeds off into the Swan Lake area, we have added conditions number 4 through 6 to mitigate the potential impacts for both erosion and for aesthetic purposes. And so next slide, please. With that, staff is recommending approval of the special use permit request. We were able to make the findings, and I did want to note that I have not received any phone calls or emails from the public at this time. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Commissioners, disclosures. Commissioner Johnson.
Madam Chair, I visited the site.
Commissioner Draculich.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Gower.
Commissioner Gower, familiar with the site.
Commissioner Marshall.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Velto.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Munoz.
Commissioner Munoz, I'm familiar with the site.
Commissioner Taylor, no disclosures. Michelle, do we have public comment for this item?
I did not receive any public comment or voicemails for this item.
Okay, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the commission for questions of the applicant or of Heather, if you'd like to start.
Madam Chair, I have a question for staff.
Commissioner Gower?
Heather, it looks like from your staff report, the project's not within the Tumwa service area, and we have the finding for utilities. We understand it's a requirement to get the will serve. I thought normally we saw those as conditions of approval. Is that something that's new that we took that out? Just assuming that it's a requirement.
Thank you, Commissioner Gower. Yes, that's exactly right. It is a requirement prior to issuance of building permits. So they will need to be annexed and get a will serve letter from Tumwa before we will issue any permits for the project.
Okay, and we don't condition that anymore.
No, it's code.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioners, other questions? Commissioner
Madam
Johnson?
Chair, Commissioner Johnson, thank you. Also following up, Heather, on a similar item to that, there's some issues in that area with sewer access. And I was wondering about that. So I looked back and it appears that the sewer may have to run through an adjacent property in order to reach the main. Is that has that been basically addressed in terms of, to staff satisfaction in terms of the ability to do that?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Johnson. And I'll turn it over to the applicant to provide specifics, but I do believe that there are two potential alternatives. One of them would be to run a line through an adjacent property. The more challenging alternative would be to go into the street, but I would like to turn it over to John or Carrie to answer that question from the applicant side.
I see John's unmuted. I'm going to let him answer that one.
I'm trying to figure out how to make my phone work. You guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. So yeah, we worked with the city to verify that we could run a lift station up to the sewer in Echo. But in coordinating with the neighbor, the Makita project, we found that due to the shallow nature of their sewer lines to get their site to work, they could benefit from additional flows to ensure that they've got velocities, like cleansing velocities. So we're working with them as our primary alternative to get an easement to tie into their sewer that's already, it's about 15 feet from our property line. And it'll be beneficial to all if we work that out. And then if for some reason that doesn't work out, then we'll do a lift station up into Echo.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then I guess just as a question, because you brought up the adjacent parcel, what do you know elevation wise what the floor level of this project is in relation to the admin building from the Makita side, not the warehouse, but the one closest to you?
I don't have an exact number. It's lower. I want to say it's about 10 feet lower.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. No further questions right now, Madam Chair.
Commissioners, other questions? Discussion?
Sorry, I'm back with a discussion item. So I just, the discussion, this is certainly, we see a number of projects that come in with cuts and fills. And usually the cuts and fills are closer to the 10 or 20 foot that requires this. And, in looking at this, there is you look at the fill map and we don't even have a color red dark enough for the amount of fill that's happening at part of this site. And in looking at it, and I appreciate all the comments from both the staff and the applicant, but I'm looking at the special use permit for cuts and fills, and there's two findings, and one of them is the grading is necessary to provide safe and adequate access to the development. Well, it's the project type that's causing the need for the fills, not the access to the development. The roadway and the site are essentially at the same elevation. So the grading that we're looking at here, the 30-foot plus fills that we're doing in the back are being done not to access the development, but to accommodate the particular development that this applicant wants to do. And in looking at, especially in light of the discussion that we had just before this, in terms of what are the different options that are available, certainly a warehouse of this type is not out of character for that. There's one right across the street, there's one right next door. But that was the reason for the question about the one next door, because that, although the access is a little different, was set down lower and didn't have the fills that this one does. The project could exist without 30-foot fills. It just wouldn't be the project that we're looking at right now. So if I'm looking at the way the findings are written, to me, I have a hard time making finding B for the special use permit, because unless I'm misunderstanding what the idea of access to the development is, it's not the access, it's the development that requires it. So obviously I may be splitting hairs there, but whenever I see a 30-foot fill with a 4-to-1 slope, even if it is facing the lake, there's no way that that's going to be treated in a way that doesn't look man-made. So I'd be curious to hear other commissioners' thoughts on that, but just with respect to the scale of this particular fill request, it just makes me look at that in a way that we haven't been looking at these previously. So that's my comment for discussion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioners?
Yes, Madam Chair. That's an interesting point, Commissioner Johnson. And before I kind of, I guess, ask you questions about that, I'd like to hear from the applicant and from the city if they have a response to the point you just made. So would Carrie or Heather be able to, do you all have anything to say in response to Commissioner Johnson's concerns and how to read the kind of second element?
Well, I'll say that, code is pretty clear on our responsibilities as on the applicant side to make the natural visual appeal of the manufactured slope, so that when we do that fill, we have to include where we can't do 2-to-1 series of rocks and tiers and landscaping. For the much as possible, we'll be doing revegetation, using large boulders for retaining dirt and so supporting that fill. In terms of the technical engineering, I would let John weigh in, but we've worked with Heather because she brought up concerns. So we've been working back and forth to make sure we have a project that does meet both findings of the SUP. John, did you want to say anything about the geotechnical considerations?
Yeah, if you don't mind, this is John Browning, Tectonics Design Group. A couple of things, actually. The first is the access is actually the constraint with this site. The maximum slopes that you're going to develop for any truck traffic or automobile traffic are less than the site slope. So as you come onto the site further, you create the fill. So we looked at a lot of different options for this parcel, and there's really no way to get away from these fills unless you just don't develop. And so it is the access that's driving that. The Makita project benefited from a lower access point so they could bring their building down because the elevation goes down across their parcel. We didn't have such luxury. And if we tried to bring a steeper drive in, we were still gaining fill as we went into the site. There was just no way to get around it, unfortunately. And then the geotech, as far as making this work, we've been working diligently with our geotech because it's prudent and also because staff asked us to make sure that we're going to create a slope that is stable, that's not going to run off and slough off across the property line. And so one thing that the geotech is recommending is that we work on trying to get those detention basins closer to the bottom of the slope to catch sediment and then provide alternate access to them. And we're working through those recommendations, and we're going to make sure that what is in place is sustainable and is successful.
Heather, did you have anything to add to Commissioner Johnson?
I didn't have anything to add. I did speak on this topic very specifically with the applicant, and they did demonstrate that, a big part of their request is the fact that Echo does rise, Mountain Boat does rise going across this where Military Road did not. So it is a different situation in that aspect. And, original review, requested modification to the driveways to reduce the overall fills on the back end of the site. But, as John mentioned, it would have eliminated the project had they modified the driveway. The driveway would have just been too steep coming off the street.
Yeah, thank you. Carl, do you have a take on what the development means? You're talking about grading being necessary to provide safe and adequate access to the development.
No, I think that these findings are subject to interpretation. And, I know in the past we've had findings that weren't directly applicable to, what we're actually looking at in terms of the project. So, this is up to the commission's discretion as to how you interpret the findings.
Thank you.
Commissioners, other questions or discussion?
Madam Chair, I have some discussion points, but they're not really on this topic, so I don't want to cut off anybody else if someone else, the commissioner wants to talk on, discuss Commissioner Johnson's point.
I don't see any other hands raised, but jump on in.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Munoz. I almost look at this location from my house, so it's only a few hundred yards away from me. And what used to be in that area where Makita is was a dumping ground for concrete and rebar and all this other stuff before Makita came in and fixed that area and put that beautiful building on there. How far it is away from the lake, I don't have any concerns with that. And I mean, frankly, I don't see this project as them making something that's gonna, fall off into the lake because of the large infill. I believe it's gonna be safe. There's not really anything on that hillside now except a bunch of old infill and piles. I mean, I don't have any concerns with this at all, and I understand Commissioner Johnson's points. I don't see the same issues with that. So just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Commissioner Munoz. Commissioner Marshall?
Thank you. This is, maybe this is triggered from a recent article in the combination of things, a recent article in the Los Angeles newspaper about, they're terming it diesel deserts. And so what we're doing here, and this really circles back around to the fact that we have no sustainability criteria for developments. And what we're doing again is piling more truck traffic into a closed air basin. And with significant diesel emissions, no more than, your standard warehouse. But I personally would like to start us thinking about conditioning projects out in the future to basically say, within a certain time period, you need to have an electrified fleet. And because otherwise, I think what we're going to be seeing is just development of more of these. And without any push from us, I think we could, potentially be having a significant environmental impact on health concerns. But we also don't want to take it out on this one individual project either. So I've been trying to figure out a way to, have an acceptable condition that would try to push us towards electrification of the truck fleet. That, hopefully when we get, some unknown time down the road, then the city actually addresses sustainability concerns, that we do something in the meantime. So I'd like to, when the time is right, to propose a condition that requires electrification element at some point in the future, to allow, hopefully some time for the city to get its act together on this, and to not unduly, put a condition on this one particular warehousing project. But I think we should be doing this from here on out. So those are my 2 cents. And thank you, Michelle, for allowing me to be on time and add more elements to our discussion.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you, Commissioner Marshall. Other commissioners? Commissioner Gower.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to not necessarily echo, but just agree with where Commissioner Marshall's thought process is. I think we missed an opportunity with the Title 18 update to comprehensively address things like sustainability that we could comprehensively and consistently apply to projects like this. So we're not in the position to feel like we need to come up with or, provide potentially inconsistent recommendations from project to project. That was the purpose of the Title 18 update. That's what we were told going into that process. And here we are at the end of it, and we have no more teeth in this arena than we did before. And I'm frankly just frustrated about it. It's not fair to, this applicant to apply conditions. While I agree with electrification, I've got a laundry list of, sustainability related conditions that I'd love to put on this and every other project that we see. But it's not fair to pick and choose. That's why it needs to be in code so that applicants can see that going into projects and they know exactly what to expect. So I really do hope that we as a city take sustainability as a priority and start implementing it, because every single project that comes through where we don't apply things like electrification standards or whatever the element is, we're missing another opportunity. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioners. Commissioner Draculich?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I agree with Commissioner Marshall and Commissioner Gower. I know that's probably a conversation that's happened a lot before I've got here, but I do agree. Commissioner Marshall, good point with the air basin and really air quality being of utmost importance as we continue to grow. So I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you, Commissioner Draculich. And I guess I will add, this commission, I know we all worked really hard for some of that sustainable language in the new code update, and it didn't quite make it. So I don't think it's lack of our efforts on this commission. But good discussion. Other questions? Commissioners, would somebody like to make a motion?
I'm ready to make a motion, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Draculich?
In the matter of case number LDC 21-00053, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the special use permit subject to conditions, and I can meet the findings.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Marshall?
I'd like to ask the maker of the motion if he would be amenable to a condition to, Heather, were you asking me to stop?
No, I'd like to maybe address that comment before the motion maker amends their motion.
Thank you. Let me spill it out and then you can have your say. To add a condition to require electrification of the truck fleet within 5 years.
I think I'm ready to make that part of my motion.
If I may, Chair.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Go ahead.
I didn't hear what you said.
Thank you.
No, wait.
Go ahead, Heather. Go ahead, Heather.
Okay, so if I may address the sustainability element, while, I think staff would agree with all of the comments made tonight on that point. And I do believe Angela can correct me if I'm wrong, but we did take what we could with the Title 18 update. And we do have a pretty lengthy list of really important topics to address at a later date. And I do believe sustainability did fall on that list of items to get addressed with future updates. But to the point on electrification of vehicles that would access the site, I did want to just clarify that this is a special use permit for fills alone, and there's no development proposed as a part of this project aside from the fills to support a development in the future.
So as much as I agree with you, Commissioner Marshall, I'm not ready to put that on the applicant right now with this motion.
Understood.
Okay, we have the motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Belto, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, Michelle, can you please take a vote for us?
Yes. Kathleen Taylor.
Yes.
John Marshall.
No.
JD Draculich.
Yes.
Peter Gower.
Yes.
Mark Johnson.
No.
Arthur Munoz.
Commissioner Munoz, that's a yes. If the condition was put on that we were going to require this project to have electric in 5 years, it would be an absolute no. I don't think that's fair to put that on this when we haven't done that before and set a precedent that is possibly unsustainable or unfathomable by trucking fleets. It's not even a possibility to do that right now. So it's a yes. If that condition went on, it would be a no. Thank you.
Alex Velto.
Yes, and I just want to echo what Commissioner Munoz just said. Aside from the feasibility, I don't think we should add a condition that could severely alter what's happening without at least asking the applicant what their take is. But I would vote yes.
So the vote is 5-2. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct, Michelle.
Okay, so your motion passes.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Okay, commissioners, let's move on to item 4.3. This is case number LVC 21-00054, Daybreak Plan Area 18A. This is a request for a tentative map to develop an 81-unit single-family detached subdivision. Michelle, do we have a presentation from the applicant, please?
We do. We have, I think. Derek, are you doing? Yeah, you're doing the presentation. We have the Derek Kirklands here.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Derek Kirkland with Wood Rogers for the record. Go ahead and I don't know how you guys want to do this, Brooke. I don't know if you want to jump in. So the way I know we have 4 items, so I'm just going to do a presentation for all 4, if that's okay with you guys, Madam Chair.
I think we'll take them in order. So we'll do 4.3, and then we'll go through and have a discussion on that, and then we'll move on to 4.4 and take them in order if that works.
I think
Okay.
Derek's presentation has the 2 tentative maps put together, which I'm sure is okay for him to present, but the parcel maps are separate on his presentation. So is that right, Derek?
Okay, so commissioners, are we okay with one presentation for items 4.3 and 4.4, and then we'll take them separately? Is that what you're asking?
Angela, do you?
Yeah, I think we have a couple combined presentations, but you guys will take each application and discuss it and vote on it separately.
Sounds good.
Can we just get?
I'm sorry, can I just clarify that? So 4.3 and 4.4 together in one presentation, and then 4.5 and 4.6 are together in another presentation. I'd like to keep those 2 separate.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Let me know when you guys can see that.
I can see it.
Yeah.
Just could you blow it up a little bit? Thank you.
All right.
Start whenever you're ready.
All right, so the 2 tentative maps for Daybreak are for the plan areas or villages 18A and 19B. I know you guys have seen this recently. Andy Derling gave a presentation for a couple other tentative maps not that long ago. In too much detail about the Daybreak PUD is. I think you guys are aware of that. So it's 3,995 dwelling units. Quite a bit of open space that's associated with it, and a lot of benefits in terms of additional flood pool storage that was over and above what's required by RMC. And kind of the things we like to highlight with this development, I think you'll see throughout my presentation, is just how connected, just in terms of the bike ped connectivity with the area, kind of complementing what they did with Veterans Parkway. So the villages that we're talking about tonight, 18A is basically the village to the north, and then 19B is the village that runs along what we're calling Talos Valley Parkway, which is a little bit lower. And basically these are all associated with what we call the Town Center West. The 19B tentative map is 72 lots. They're a 4-plex single family attached type product. I'll get into a little bit of that detail here in a minute, but overall within this mixed use, mixed neighborhood land designation within the PUD, was really to promote that missing middle product types. Minimum net density of 8 dwelling units per acre, and 19B with the attached townhome product is actually at 36 dwelling units per acre. 18A is 81 lots, and it's more of a small lot detached product type. And I'll again get into a little more detail here in a minute, but kind of a unique product for this area. I don't think we've seen a whole lot of it here. Kind of mimics similar to a single family attached, but they're actually detached units. So if somebody wanted a little bit more privacy, a little bit of yard, gives them some different options there, but still kind of keeps our density up as we promised with this Daybreak PUD. And again, net density at 0.7 units per acre, which is well above the minimum 8 that's required. Out of order, but 19B, so the 72 units. So these are, again, single family attached. And one thing I'll comment in terms of the design of this is really trying to keep this an open and inviting neighborhood, kind of making it so even though we have a little bit denser product types, you can really enjoy kind of getting out the open spaces. And then if you're driving along into the Daybreak community, it basically, these would all be front doors. So basically, everything enters out onto the street, and then we have an alleyway that's basically all garage loaded. And then on the back street, which this was some of the tentative maps that you saw a few weeks ago, they share a common street. And so again, you'll see the front doors all along the street frontage there. Parking with these, per the PUD, are required 2 spaces per unit. And so each unit has a 2-car garage, which will be accessed via the alleyway. And with the single family attached, we're actually required one guest space per 10 units, which would equate to about 8 guest spaces. And we actually have a couple different parking pockets here with a total of 13. And because they do share the street with the other tentative maps, there will be on-street parking all along here. So plenty of for these. We do have 15% common open space. And with the single family attached, there's no requirement specifically, only front yards to be landscaped, but we do have about 15% open space that'll all be landscaped with access to the Teles Valley Parkway. And we do have, and I have another slide that talks about the park for this area, but we do actually have a proposed park that'll be just north of here that they'll have access to as well. These are 3-bedroom units ranging from 16 to 1,800 square feet. Gives you kind of gives you an idea, kind of a glimpse of what these are anticipated to look like. And the thought with these is it looks like larger homes, but there's actually 4 units within each of the buildings. And then again, on the rear elevation, they'll all have 2-car garages. So moving on to Village 18A. Again, you saw 18B last couple weeks, or a couple weeks ago, I should say. And here, the blue line basically indicates kind of that dividing line between 18B and 18A. With this one, these are the smaller lot products. Again, single family detached style, but they do have, as you'll notice, and I'll get into a little more detail here in a minute, but they do have some of the garages similar to the attached product where the garages are actually up closer to the street. So we have a little bit smaller lot, but it does give them a little bit more of a private backyard. And we do have a little bit of a modified street section with this one. The curb to curb is the same as the public street section, but because of these front, this unique product on the street, we had to modify basically behind the curb line. And I've got a detail for that I'll share here in a minute. So parking on these, basically 2 to 3 spaces per unit. And the reason there are 2 to 3 spaces is you can see we have a couple different product types. One that has more of like a tandem garage setup, but it gives them an extra driveway space. And then we have a more traditional 2-car garage that'll be up closer to the driveway. And it kind of gives you an idea of how it can be staggered. And so it kind of breaks up the architecture a little bit and kind of creates a unique product, and again gives people some opportunities to still have some privacy but have smaller lots. So again, the right-of-way curb to curb is the same as the City of Reno standard right-of-way section, with the exception that the sidewalks are actually will be actually maintained by the HOA. The right of way between curb to curb will be maintained by the city and will be dedicated to the city. The sidewalks maintained by the HOA, and the reason for that is because some of these garages are up closer. The driveway or the sidewalk is actually included in UV. And so that allowed us to basically, kind of bring these garages forward a little bit more, and kind of create some more open space in the back. These will have, as you can see here, because the garages are up closer, basically there's one, you end up with one parking spot for every 2 units on the street as well. This gives you an idea, perspective, what these units look like. And again, you can kind of see the architecture with some of those garages set back, where every other one or every couple would have a driveway in some cases. And these will range a little bit larger than the single family attached. These will range from about 1,800 to 1,900 square feet. Again, just as you saw with the previous tentative maps for 19A, 18B, 18A and 19B will also have that same connectivity with the shared use path going around and then connecting along South Meadows, connecting to that Veterans Parkway system. Also fairly close by and some additional parks as well. And then this gives you, I think you saw these last meeting as well, but here's the same thing, just kind of the perspective of what the Talos Valley, kind of that main entrance point will look like with landscaping and shared use path on one side. And then the shared use path kind of along the common open space area. We're making those all 10 feet to kind of meet the new kind of shared use path standards. With this development, there was definitely some flooding, some wetland stuff. And so just to give you a perspective of how these fit in, basically the major wetlands just kind of to the north of 18 here, those are basically going to be untouched and preserved. This is more of an irrigation ditch, and we're working with the Army Corps on that. So it actually will be relocated over here, and that's all part of our mitigation plan, which is actually in process with the Army Corps now and has been tentatively approved with them. So we're still going through that process, and there is a condition we are in agreement with that prior to any grading, we have to provide that information to city staff to show that the Army Corps has approved this development plan as well. 19B doesn't really have much of an impact on the flooding or the wetlands. And again, we're in process with our CLOMAR. And so again, there's a condition that speaks to that as well in terms of before we can put any grading permits for this area, we have to basically show the approved CLOMAR. Again, talking about the neighborhood park. So basically I have 18A here and then 18B, which was previously approved. And then you have 19B over here, and you can see this is kind of our concept for this neighborhood park. And per the PUD, we were required to provide a minimum of 3-acre park in the south area. And so this is just kind of that concept of basically what we're intending to have that park. And I think this is a nice amenity for this community, and it really ties kind of the openness of these communities and kind of keeping that consistent feel of having everything be as open as possible to kind of the open spaces. And just kind of creating that pedestrian and bike connectivity through there. And this park is will be built at probably as most of these units get built out. This will probably be kind of the last thing to get built out, but it will be constructed by the master developer. With that, that concludes my presentation for the tentative maps. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen and answer any questions you guys might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek.
Thanks, Derek. Brooke, do you have a presentation?
Yes, good evening, Planning Commission. Brooke Oswald, Associate Planner for the record. I will do my presentations per each case that we have open, so I'll give one for each. Okay, is my screen visible? All right, wonderful. Once again, Brooke Oswald, Associate Planner for the record. Presenting for you today the case LDC 21-00054, the Daybreak Planning Area 18A. This commission has seen, several members have seen the PUD coming through originally, and then we have seen a number of tentative maps over the last several months. Specifically, recently we've seen the two related to this particular development side that they're working on now. Once again, that's the overall site is 980 acres. This project size for 18A is 21.5 acres. They're requesting that tentative map for 81 single family detached dwelling units. We analyze this under the zoning of the PUD Daybreak handbook. When that things are not addressed in that handbook, we go back to RMC, Reno Municipal Code, to further review those. As this one's coming through, we're seeing a density on these smaller lot units at almost 15 dwelling units per acre. That would be similar to some of our lower multifamily that we see, with the requirement there within the handbook that they only have to build to 8 dwelling units per acre. So they're just below, you can see where the site is over on the top. We're just looking at that top 21 acres now. Of this side, and then a good overview of sort of what we've approved. So the first 3 tentative maps, those were on the east side, previously approved over on the other side of the tentative maps. And now we're working on villages 18 and 19. And these will be the last, the 2 tentative maps you'll hear tonight will be the last 2 tentative maps on 18 and 19. So we look at this, we're looking at that general site design and architecture. I'd like to thank the applicant's representative for giving a good overview of not only the parking, but the architecture and the connectivity, and also that relation to the open space on that. We're looking at that compatibility with the surrounding uses. Once again, this is a series of tentative maps, very denser housing, all single family residential housing, both in detached and attached products. That traffic access and circulation, we will have, per the PUD handbook, those improvements. A signalized intersection will be required. And then we have that pedestrian connectivity with the great shared use path along the open space, and then the required shared use paths and sidewalks throughout the development. Those provisions of utilities and services, we've been following that as we've gone. Sewer, electrical will all be provided. Additionally, just to skip over really quick, that phasing of the infrastructure, that's really important on this. You'll see a condition that addresses that that backbone infrastructure has to go in prior to any of the others. Now, we'd anticipate they would build in succession, so they would move down that infrastructure, but if chosen and this went first, we would have that backbone and make sure that we have all the utilities and infrastructure in place to service the standalone development. Environmental and cultural, several conditions on there. As Derek mentioned, one related to the wetlands, that no grading can occur until we have that information from the Army Corps of Engineers. Cultural, we did receive a letter from the tribes and showing concern. They are working on that 404 with the Army Corps of Engineers. Additionally, we have a condition that requires oversight of any sort of cultural discovered through grading or any other operations. Additionally, we have a noxious weed and native plant management plan that will be provided to help ensure that we are protecting those surrounding natural areas. And then last, we look at that master plan conformance. As I've mentioned before, this the PUD really centers around the master plan. The new master plan, it's incorporated within the handbook itself. And so we're constantly going back and checking, and we're seeing many of those of access to the outdoors, preservation of open space, that denser product and infill, not necessarily an infill product, but we're seeing denser products on that. No comments, public comments were received on this particular tentative map. We have received comments on the past of the overall Daybreak site. Those are largely with the environmental, flooding, and traffic issues with that. Staff can recommend approval of this tenant map based on the compliance with the applicable finding and subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. I'm available for questions as needed.
Thanks, Brooke. Let's bring it back to the commission for disclosures. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I conversed via email with the applicant's representative and familiar with the project.
Commissioner Marshall.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Gower.
I have previously visited the site.
Commissioner Draculich.
Previously visited the site.
Commissioner Munoz.
Same disclosure.
Commissioner Velto.
Previously visited the site and I spoke to the applicant's representative.
Commissioner Taylor, I previously visited the site. Michelle, do we have any public comment for this item?
I did not receive any public comment for this item, nor did I receive any voicemails.
Okay, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the commissioners for questions of the applicant or Brooke. I'd like to get us started. Commissioner Draculich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for the applicant. Derek, I may have missed it. On 19B, will there be on-street parking on Talus Valley? I know there is on the other side, but I didn't catch it if there would be on Talus Valley.
We're not on that
Derek
item
Kirkland. Sorry.
yet. We're on 18A.
My apologies. I forgot we were going with that first. I'll wait till later.
Commissioners, questions on 4.3? Commissioner Marshall?
This is a question for Brooke. Brooke, can you walk me through the Colomar process? And I'll tell you, my specific concern is, particularly with this one, the timing of the requirement that, you know, we're approving the tentative, but the Colomar does not have to be essentially finished and before construction. And does that give us enough time to make any changes that might be necessary as a result of whatever comes out of FEMA?
Certainly, and I'll probably ask Mike Michelle, our engineering manager, to assist in this. There were several other conditions applied through the handbook itself to ensure that we are properly looking at this. We have third-party oversight. We have a number of other things, but you know, there's kind of a two process, the Colomar process, and I would ask Mike to kind of maybe help to clarify that and how that would move forward and how we see the development and making sure that we're meeting the code and also protecting the sensitive land as we move forward.
Good evening.
Under the bus, Mike.
Yeah, I hear that. Good evening, Mike Michelle, engineering manager for the record. Commissioner Marshall, the language that you see in this tentative map is very similar to other language that you see in similar situations. They're required to process a Colomar prior to starting grading, and I'm very close to where that process is with these guys, and I know they are ready to submit to FEMA imminently for that Colomar. I think there is ample time to make any kind of change that may be necessary. Also, I would like to point out that today, technically, they are in a flood zone. However, with the building of Veterans Parkway, RTC was required to process a letter of map revision, and that is very close to being approved by FEMA. Once that's done, the flood zone designation for this property is actually taken away. So they technically, physically today are not in a flood zone, but based on the FEMA maps, they are. But the bottom line is there's ample time to make whatever changes that may need to be made.
How does that, and I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, how does that come back around? Let's say there's a mitigation package that Derek referred to as part of the CLOMAR. Does that, if it has an impact on the tentative that we're looking at right now, or is that tentative basically set in stone because of, we've already made the approval of it? I guess
Well,
that's what I'm trying to figure out how you work in any particular mitigations that might affect the tentative map.
Good question. The CLOMAR that they are doing is a CLOMAR for the entire project. So any mitigation would be identified in that overall CLOMAR. So you wouldn't necessarily be impacting this particular tentative map because mitigation would be provided elsewhere within the larger project.
But so it would be offset on other lands that have not been subject to a tentative?
Correct. In the PUD, they have identified certain areas set aside for drainage mitigation. And that is all not subject to these entitlements or the entitlements that you've already approved.
Okay. Derek, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, Derek Kirkland, Wood Rogers for the record. So I would just point out too that, we've done a significant amount of modeling, and, we wouldn't be bringing these tenant maps forward if we, didn't have some reasonable assurance that we were going to have a lot of changes. There's also a condition in the tentative map that basically says we can't grade on the site. We can't do anything until that CLOMAR is in place. So if that CLOMAR came back and, had some sort of, required us to do some sort of change to the tenant map, I would think it would be very minimal, if any. We don't anticipate any changes at this point, but, have that safety net in terms of we can't grade this property until that CLOMAR is in place.
Yeah, I'm just worried about us having to rely on the CLOMAR findings and the mitigation package to make our findings. And when that hasn't been finalized yet. So I think that's just an outstanding issue for me, but I understand now how you're looking at it. Thank you for those considerations or those answers to my questions.
Commissioners, other questions? Discussion?
Chair,
Oh, sorry.
Chair, quick question for Derek. Derek, you had the slide up earlier with the park, and you mentioned that it was the final aspect of the development. I understand the timing with that, but curious what the essentially the time is between completion of the first unit and the full construction of that park, and then maybe if you could give me a sense of what the timing is between expected. I know this is all kind of expected here, but towards the end of the construction of the last unit and when that park is available, again, to be able to address the finding that we have for accessibility or availability of parks.
Derek Kirkland, Wood Rogers for the record. So to answer your questions, obviously there's a lot of moving parts and it gets complicated. But I can tell you that, they're actively marketing this area. So I'd imagine that, as these units move forward, they're going to be looking closer at that park. The PUD doesn't really specify a time frame for the park. It basically just says you need to provide a park in the south, a neighborhood park. So, at some point, the park will be built by the master developer. And so as these villages get built out, I would imagine, obviously they're gonna have to put in the infrastructure for 18B and 18A. And so that'll kind of drive how fast that is built out. But I will point out in the interim, prior to that park being built out, The Cyan Park is probably less than a half a mile away, and is fairly connected with the shared use path and sidewalk. So in the interim, before this park's built, they will have access to the brand new Cyan Park.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the connectivity that's built into the project too, to connect to other parks and trails in the area. I mean, would you be opposed to a condition that put the construction of that park associated with a unit count or a timeline at the end of the final unit completion?
It just makes it hard for that condition, just because I don't know, which ones are going to go first and how the backbone is going to work with these different tentative maps. There really isn't a timeline in the PUD. I mean, I know that the intent is to build that park with these, as these villages get built out. I just don't know. It's hard to say kind of timing wise. And again, I mean, this is actually, we even have to propose the park with these villages per the PUD. Again, they do have access to the Cyan Park while this is, while they're working on these villages and ultimately getting this park built out.
If I could just add a little bit more to that, Brooke Oswald, Associate Planner for the record. We do have about 11.5 acre central park that will be planned. That is timed to come in during a certain phase. It has to be within a phase. We did leave some flexibility with these 3 acres that we sort of want throughout the villages, and how they put them together and how it goes to have that flexibility with the development. Staff has analyzed sort of how that park and how those are coming in. They are proposing at this time, but as Derek said, it makes it difficult as they don't know which tentative map or which map would move forward and how that would go. We are seeing that connectivity over to Cyan Park. The regional trail is now built and is in close proximity with these. We'll see that continuation of that sidewalk and the access over there. And so we would see this coming in. We'd anticipate it would probably happen before we'd see the eastern side of that Talus Way begin to develop. But we did intentionally within the PUD leave a little flexibility so that they could find when it was appropriate to start putting some of the smaller parks. And as I said, we do have a larger park that does have a phased timeline in it as it comes in.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Brooke. Thanks for chiming in. I forgot about the larger park being tied to the phasing. I think that's an important point. And, it wasn't a concern when I originally looked at the staff report, and I didn't talk to Derek about it ahead of time. But in your presentation, it felt a little open-ended and when the park might be implemented. But I understand having the flexibility built into a development like this. So, Brooke, with your explanation, I'm quite a bit more comfortable with it. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Marshall?
Yes, Brooke, I was I couldn't figure out why the 2 letters from the school district show different numbers, and particularly for the elementary school for 19 for the next project. Is that just because they're actually even though they're so close, they're zoned differently?
I think it has to do with the attached and detached products. So they look at those differently, anticipating children versus non-children, and that detached product often will have a higher number than associated with an attached product. And I think that's where we're seeing that difference in the way that I've seen their past analysis done.
Yeah, it wasn't so much that they were driving the numbers, but they had a different school list. And they had one school, that was up over 100% through the out years, and that didn't appear on this item. I think it was just the next item.
Yeah, there was a little difference in that. They had some back and forth. Now, it should be noted there's a requirement for a elementary school. We'd anticipate it'll be developed in this quadrant, or this kind of southwest side. So I know the applicant's been in, and the applicant's representative have been in pretty in-depth conversations of when that would be required, when they'd start to see that, how that site selection will happen. And I think they've got some initial concepts of when that would come in. So yeah, we were seeing a little bit different from the analysis on the school, the current school populations, but the overall is that I think the comments imply that they are comfortable with the units coming in, and that the current school and the way that they are moving that can accommodate the students they'd anticipate with this, and then knowing as this further develops and that density continues to come in, that a new elementary school would be built on the project, Daybreak project.
Thank you.
Commissioners, other questions? Discussion?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson, just real quick, I don't know if this is for Brooke or for Mike. Derek pointed out in this one, there's a slightly different street section and right-of-way approach that is going on around these buildings. Is there any concern from a traffic standpoint with respect to the, how close the buildings are, the houses are shown in relation to the street, especially in the sense that it's still a single-family detached product?
I can jump in initially. We from the planning perspective, we're really looking at that streetscape, and as the image that Derek showed, the conceptual image, it does kind of bring, the homes are really pushed forward, creating kind of a more, slightly more urban feel in a way, which is compatible with the development we'll see next. Those sidewalks are pushed out to the street to help provide for that closer limited setback, and the no external driveways or that modification of that tandem driveway. From a planning perspective, we see this kind of a unique product with more of an urban feel, and then we're seeing that density that's coming with that too, of those 2,800 square foot lots. I would ask Mike if he has any more is specifically related to any vehicular safety or anything on that.
Yeah, Mike Michelle, engineering manager for the record. Yeah, I would have no concern with the capacity of the street section. It's able to, it's certainly able to carry the traffic volumes that we're looking for it to carry. So.
Okay, and I appreciate that answer. I mean, I understand what they're trying to go for with that. It's just, and it looks like from the street layout, there's no real long uninterrupted runs where somebody could build up speed and it could be problematic. So that was the sort of the combination question as far as that goes. So thank you, Madam Chair. That was the only question.
Okay, Commissioners, discussion? I'm not seeing any hands up. Does somebody want to make a motion?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson, I can make a motion on this one. Case of LDC 21-00046 Daybreak Planning Area 18A. Based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I recommend the Planning Commission approve the tentative map subject to the conditions, and I can make all of the findings.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Munoz, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion?
Madam Chair, I'm going to be voting no on the motion just because I can't make finding number 8 specifically on the timing of the Clomar. Thank you.
Okay, Michelle, will you do a vote for us, please?
Yes. Kathleen Taylor?
Yes.
John Marshall?
No.
JD Draculich?
Yes.
Peter Gower?
Yes.
Mark Johnson?
Yes.
Arthur Munoz?
Yes.
Thank you. Alex Felto?
Yes.
Okay, the vote is 6-1.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. For item 4.4, do we just want to go right into Brooke?
That's fine,
Okay.
unless Derek has anything to add.
Okay, so I'll open the item. It's case number LDC 21-00055 Daybreak Plan Area 19B. This is a request for a tentative map to develop 72-unit single-family attached townhome subdivision. We did receive a presentation from the applicant. Darren, do you have anything that you want to add right now?
Derek Kirkland, Wood Rogers. Nothing to add now, but be happy to answer questions as they come up.
Okay, thank you. Brooke?
Great, thank you. Let me get the presentation up, and it's rather short. I think you saw much of what Derek explained in this, and the sort of different product and the back-loaded product that we're seeing. All right, is my presentation visible?
Yes.
Wonderful. Brooke Oswald, Associate Planner for the record. This is case LDC 2100055, Daybreak Planning Area 19B. Just quickly to show where that is again, so that we're looking at that sliver of property that is directly adjacent to what will be Talus Way, located within the Daybreak PUD. This is the density. We're seeing a density of 36 dwelling units per acre. That's a net density, with that required of only 8. Once again, we're just kind of keeping as a tally as we come along. The commission will continue to see this as we anticipate more tentative maps will come in, and so we're understanding exactly where we are in that. Very similar project analysis and conditions related that we saw on the previous tentative map tonight. The general site design and architecture. These are an attached product. This is the first attached product that we have seen within the tentative maps. As Derek demonstrated, it's a unique product in that it's not the traditional sort of same units along. They do have a different appearance from the frontscape. We'd see that front along that Talus Way. They are pushed forward. So we're seeing that limited vehicular or drives on there. They are all a backloaded product. That compatibility with the surrounding use, we're seeing some detached product of a little less density. And then the last tentative map we saw, that density is getting more. And then we're really seeing that heavy density along that connector way of Talus Way. Traffic and access is very similar. We're seeing we'll have to see the improvement of the intersection, signalized intersection condition, very similar, that the backbone infrastructure that has to be there to support this project prior to it moving forward. Environmental and cultural are all the very similar to the previous tentative map we saw. We have noxious weeds, the wetland, Clomar related information, flood information going on. And then once again, we're looking at that master plan conformance. This really starts to hit some of those alternative product types and housing types. As kind of went through the whole Daybreak, this is really some of that missing middle product that we've been anticipating with this project. So staff can recommend approval of the tentative map based on the compliance with the applicable findings and subject to the condition listed in the staff report. I am available for questions as needed.
Thanks, Brooke. Commissioners, I guess we'll run through some disclosures. Commissioner Johnson.
Commissioner Johnson spoke with the applicant's representative.
Commissioner Gower.
Previously visited the site.
Commissioner Draculich.
Familiar with the site.
Commissioner Munoz.
I'm familiar with the site.
Commissioner Marshall.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Velto.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Taylor, I visited the site. Michelle, do we have any public comment for this item?
I did not receive public comment or voicemail for this item.
Okay, we'll close public comment and ask the commission for questions of the applicant or of Brooke. Commissioner Dracula.
Sorry, I blew it last time. For the applicant, so sorry if I missed it when you presented, but is there going to be on-street parking on Talus Valley?
Derek Kirkland, Wood Rogers for the record. No, just the no parking along Talus Valley. So only parking along that rear common street.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Commissioners, other questions? Okay, I don't see any hands. Discussion?
Madam Chair, can I ask a quick question? And I guess it applies to any of these, and to Brooke, so there's no traffic study triggered for these individual tentative maps, but as these come in, in phased fashion, is there any sort of need to revisit the traffic with the latest, traffic information based on other development in the area? Or I guess the fundamental question is, how are we addressing traffic more cumulatively in this area as this gets phased out?
Yeah, and so with the overall PUD, there was that master traffic study that was done on that. That's taken into the RTC anticipated future development that will happen out there. It's looking at a number of those things. We then look at that level of service that's currently there. With that planned, the traffic engineer proposed mitigation or improvements, both on-site and off-site improvements that would need to occur. The major one with this is that signalized intersection that will happen along South Meadows, what is Echo Valley now, and what will become Talus. Currently, we're going back on that, looking at that. We're not seeing the numbers, even though we'll have that now, we're not seeing the numbers with the development proposed that would alter that in any way or provide any additional offsite improvements that would need to occur. So we are continually analyzing that as the engineer and looking back on that. I think if we do start to see where we'd anticipate maybe an issue, or we know that another large product, we do have a PUD across the street, the Bella Vista Ranch Phase 2. Now, I think if we see that starting to come in and some of those improvements, then we would start to probably analyze the traffic report a little bit more, and may require a traffic letter or some other validation that we're still within the bound of that original traffic study.
I can't remember, there wasn't a requirement in the traffic study, and I'll ask you this too, Derek, but let me ask Brooke first. There wasn't a requirement in the traffic study for any sort of ongoing monitoring, periodic monitoring every year, 2 years, 3 years, just to essentially validate the information.
Well, and we'd obviously also look at that with the tentative maps as that comes in. We're getting some reassurance back that we're meeting that one. And so I think if we did, I think it would happen through the tentative map that we'd see that overall traffic study. Now, we're not seeing the now that traffic study's done at I think it was actually done before the City Council reduced the number of overall dwelling units down to 3,995. I believe it was at the original number, which was about 4,500. And we're anticipating at the build out, we probably, we won't see that full dwelling unit build out at 3,995. So we still feel that there's quite a bit of wiggle room there, that we're feeling comfortable that the original study is still very valid, and they will be required to do those improvements as they meet those or not. There are some other improvements that when we see the traffic and the densities, they will have to be done. So there'll be a constant monitoring of that plan and updates as we move through this development process.
Thanks, Brooke. Derek, did you have anything to add to that?
Derek Kirkland, Wood Rogers. The only thing I would add is that we are required in the PUD to also submit trip generation letters with each tenant map application, and so we have been submitting those. And I think generally, hit on it. Where the original traffic study was done at 4,700 units, it was reduced to 3,995, and we're actually seeing, obviously with the constraints and stuff, we're actually, and as we plot these lots, we're actually getting less units than what we're even anticipating for each village.
Thank you.
Commissioners, other questions and discussion?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson. Speaking of traffic, just maybe a question again, maybe engineering wise. So I noticed that this is essentially an alley loaded project from a traffic standpoint. But the amount of traffic that's on that alley is going to be probably equivalent to what we're seeing on the roadways there. But yet the alley or the access here isn't aligning with any of the other streets on the adjacent, the adjacent parcels. It's kind of mid-block in both cases, as opposed to aligning with, an existing street section that's shown. And considering it's not really an alley, it's actually the driveway for all of these. Is there any concern from a traffic standpoint about site distances or, multiple interchanges or anything with respect to the traffic flow through there? I guess that's a question for Brooke or Mike first, and maybe Derek can chime in as well.
Yeah, I know that our engineering did analyze that. We're looking at, there's very specific distances between drives and those drive approaches, and looking at the size and requirements of those drive aisles. I will ask Mike to maybe give a little bit more information on that and his analysis on that.
Mike Michelle, engineering manager, for the record. Yeah, Commissioner Johnson, you're right. These alleys are basically driveways. They'll be low volume alleys, and it's typical when we go through a review process of the civil drawings that we will look at any kind of site triangles to make sure that site distance is adequate. We don't anticipate there being an issue.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Brooke. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Munoz, did you have a question?
No, Madam Chair. I just wanted a quick second to introduce somebody, but she's about to leave. So this is baby Easton Rose. She's 8 days old today. So she's on the way out. So I want to introduce before we went any further. Thank you.
Congratulations. That's the best part of the whole meeting. Sorry, Derek.
It's hard to follow up after animals and kids.
Any discussion? Okay, we can move into a motion if somebody's ready.
I can make a motion.
Okay.
Based upon compliance with applicable findings, I recommend, in the matter of PAR 21-00034 Daybreak Plan 17-18-19 Map 1.
I think that's a different.
I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one.
That was the wrong item, yeah.
If anybody has it up, they can make the motion.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Draculas, I'm ready to make the motion.
Okay.
In the matter of case number LDC 21-00055 Daybreak Planning Area 19B, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I recommend that Planning Commission approve the tentative map subject to conditions, and I can meet the findings.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, motion carries unanimously. You guys, I'm going to take a quick 10-minute break before we go into 4.5. So we'll see everybody back here at 8:10.
Commissioner Taylor, may I add really quick? We may want, because the two parcel maps are really intertwined, they're sequential. It may be appropriate to open up those both at the same time and make one motion towards both of those. I'll defer to Angela and how she feels about this, but they're integrally linked to accomplish what the applicant wants to do.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, let's take a 10-minute break, guys.
Commissioner Marshall?
Yeah.
So I checked with Mr. Shipman. He did not get your email. So if you could forward that to me, that'd be helpful.
I'm sorry, it was a voicemail.
Oh, okay.
But we can talk about it in 10 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, we'll see you in 10. Angela, are you ready?
We are ready.
Oh, okay.
Okay, the recording has resumed and I'm looking to see if we have a quorum. Do we have all of our commissioners yet?
Not yet. Commissioner Marshall's late, so he can't ask any questions.
I say so. No questions for Mr. Marshall. Looks like we're still waiting for Mark Johnson to join us. There he is. Okay.
Okay, I think everybody's back. Let's get started again. We will start with item 4.5 and 4.6. It looks like the language is the same. Case number PAR 21-0034 Daybreak Plan 17-18-19 Map 1. This is a request for a merger and re-subdivision of parcels with the intent to create village parcels. Item 4.6, case number PAR 21-00035 Daybreak Plan 17-18-19 Map 2. This is a request for a merger and re-subdivision of parcels with the intent to create village parcels. Do we have a presentation, Mr. Kirkland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Derek Kirkland Wood Rogers. I do have a presentation. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. You guys see that okay?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, so we'll be talking about the sequential parcel maps, basically creating the village parcels for the tentative maps that have recently been approved. Sorry, it's going backwards on for some reason. Yeah, there you go. So essentially, what we're doing here with the parcel maps is so PUD section 2.8 actually allows sequential parcel maps through a planning commission approval. And so, you know, really to not make this too difficult, essentially what we're doing is as we get into the development plans, obviously we're pushing and pulling a little bit. So as part of this process, we also wanted to kind of clean up some of the land use, which the PUD also allows under 2.6 flexibility. But in terms of the parcels themselves, essentially all we're doing is trying to create, basically make the village boundaries match the tentative map boundaries. And the reason for that is basically it allows the master developer to create these parcels so that they can sell a tangible item to a home builder who then takes on the responsibilities of that tentative map approval. So everything we're doing is we're keeping it basically essentially to this west side that coincides with all the tentative map approvals. And at the same time, basically trying to clean up land use, which is 2.6 flexibility, which actually an administrative approval if it's less than 10%, which all the changes we made are less than 10%. But just purposes of being transparent and just making sure everybody's on the same page in terms of how this works is basically kind of what we've done. And we've provided staff with this table in our applications that I went to you as well. That just basically shows kind of how those adjustments were made. I'm going to go back a slide just so you can see comparison of, you know, where the bubble maps, you know, when we're doing the PUDs, we're creating these bubble maps. And then as we get into the more detailed lotting studies, they change. And then as we engineers get a hold of it and tell the planners how the lines really look. That's why that flexibility is built into that PUD. And essentially what we're doing is just kind of cleaning that up and then creating these parcels so that the master developer can sell those to the builders. And again, it's not allowing for any grading or anything like that. It's just simply creating a parcel, creating a tangible item, and that whoever were to purchase this parcel would be subject to the master developer's rules as well as the tenant map rules, as well as the PUD rules. And just to close out, I did want to kind of show this, just kind of overall view of what this West Town Center looks like. Obviously, now all the tenant maps have been approved. Just kind of gives you an idea. And then obviously the parcel maps would basically create these individual villages that the master developer would intend to sell to future builders. And so with that, I'll conclude my presentation and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys might have. Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. Brooke, do you have a presentation?
Yes, Brooke Oswald, Associate Planner for the record. Right. Is that visible to everyone? Just to verify. So thank you for taking these. We can look at this as two cases. As Derek explained, there are two parcel maps. Now, a parcel map is usually something we do administratively. That would be reviewed by the planning, our engineering. It goes through the community development, gets signed, goes to the county. There's quite a process. This is unique because they're doing two parcel maps. And by state law, it requires, if you do more than 4 within a certain time period, it requires a public hearing. This was contemplated within the PUD handbook that this would happen. They've set up some other rules within the PUD handbook that sort of address this process and this hearing process. But as Derek said, this is really a way, it's not a way to avoid a tentative map because we just approved several tentative maps associated with these parcel maps. It's really a way now to take those parcel maps and be able to package them. And so the master developer can appropriately either move to develop them in phases or sell those to merchant home builders to develop. The basic information of going over the tentative maps, we saw 2 additional tentative maps approved this evening and looking at the overall site and the parcels that will be created. And so this shows the older villages. A large parcel will be created that we'd anticipate we'd see future parcel maps on in the future. And then we're creating those per each tentative map that we've approved. This is just showing what Derek went over quickly. There is flexibility allowed within that handbook up to 10%. The applicant's representative did a great job of getting that information so that we can continue to track that. This is something we'll ask for at every parcel map or this sequential parcel map that we'll see. So we continue to make sure that we are meeting the handbook guidelines. Currently, they're not exceeding everything and they're within the bounds of what that is. To the left there, it's just showing what we'd start to see really when we come into the approval. We'll see the Mylar maps that will come in. And so there's an additional, we'll have a hearing approval tonight, but there's also an additional approval that will happen on these parcel maps as they go forward. So staff's reviewed them, feels comfortable with them. After this approval, there'll be that final approval period and it'll go through the county to finally record those maps. This is, as Derek showed before, this is just looking at the existing land use, those modifications as development really comes in and defining where those parcel boundaries and tentative maps are going to be. And then that modification coming in on those land uses prescribed by the handbook. As was stated before, they're within the bounds and requirements of the PUD handbook now to do this. So staff recommends approval of the parcel maps based on compliance with the applicable findings and subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. I'm available for questions as needed. Thank you.
Thanks, Brooke. Commissioners, let's start with disclosures. Commissioner Marshall.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Gower.
Previously visited the site.
Commissioner Draculich.
Familiar with the site.
Commissioner Velto.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Munoz.
Previously visited the site.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, I conversed with the applicant's representative.
Commissioner Taylor, I'm familiar with the site. Michelle, do we have any public comment?
I did not receive any public comments for item 4.5 or 4.6.
Okay, we will close public comment and ask commissioners for questions. Who would like to get us started? I don't see any hands. Are there any questions? Commissioner Marshall.
God, I'm waiting you guys out.
I tried. You clicked faster. You clicked faster than me.
Here I am.
No, wait,
Again.
you were late.
I was late. I have some conceptual difficulties what's going on with, just what's happening. And so the first question I have for Carl, which is, I'm pretty sure there's some Nevada case law on, piecemealing subdivision. So you can't use that for, the ability to subdivide into, merge and subdivide with only 4 units sequentially. So you're essentially piecemealing a 7 into a 4 and a 3. And so I'm really worried that there's a vulnerability there that, you can't use that provision to circumvent a 7, 7 parcel map. So at what point does that stop? Can you do 40 10 times? So I'm really concerned about that.
And maybe before Carl answers, I will add a little bit of background. Both our old code and our new code have the same process, and it follows state law. And if you want an NRS reference, it's 278-4646. And it says, again, for everyone that doesn't know, parcel maps is an administrative process. You can do up to 4 parcels with a parcel map. Anything more than 4 parcels requires a tentative map, which is a public hearing process. However, you can submit what we call subsequent parcel maps, meaning I'm going to subdivide into 4, I'm going to subdivide into 4 again, and subdivide into 4 again. We call that subsequent parcel map submittals. You can do that if you go through a public hearing process. So outlined in our code is that if you want to submit subsequent parcel maps, meaning you're subdividing your property into 4 parcels multiple times and not doing a tentative map process, you have to go through a public hearing process and you have to go to Planning Commission to do that. So that, again, it's been in code. We typically don't see these. In fact, the only time I remember seeing a similar process was on the Stonegate development when they did this exact same thing. And it followed, again, both our code and state law, which does allow this. Washoe County uses this on a regular basis. But they do it more for very large parcels. So if you have like a section of land and you're dividing it up into 40-acre parcels, they allow that. I don't even think they require Planning Commission approval. But here at the city, we typically don't see this, but it is allowed both in code and state law.
So what, if maybe Angela, you could clarify for me, because maybe I have the wrong, I'm thinking about this incorrectly. So we're subdividing and then subdividing?
Yeah,
So we're
because you can
taking
do
1 acreage, but I thought they're existing parcels, so we're merging and then we're subdividing twice?
So typically what you would see in this type of case is you're creating a parcel map and it's 3 parcels plus a remainder parcel. And then your second parcel map takes that larger remainder parcel and divides it up into 3 more parcels plus a remainder parcel. So you're kind of subdividing multiple times through these subsequent parcel maps. You can do that through a merger and resub parcel map, which is another type of parcel map, where you have multiple parcels, you combine them and re-subdivide, or you can do it straight with just a straight parcel map. which is one parcel divided up into new parcels.
So if I look at, I guess I'm trying to either, I'm looking at, I don't know, it says page 2, but I think it must be a development plan of the first staff report, 4.5C, or looking at the actual parcels themselves on 4.5D and, you know, the two maps, but the before and after. I can't follow, you know, there's 6 parcels on D, and there's 6 parcels on the second, you know, D. So I'm not, maybe I'm being particularly dense, but I can't follow the merging and the re-subdivision, because are the subdivision lines or the parcel lines exactly the same, and what's changing is the distribution of uses within the parcel? Because that's what seems, the charts are, you know, we're losing half an acre of open space, for example.
Yep, and there's
what's happening?
So what's before you today is a parcel map. And so that has to do with the parcel boundaries. As part of this as well, within that PUD, there's an allowance to move, you know, the colors on the map within a certain limit. I think it's a 10% limit. So what they've done on the maps in the staff report is they've showed you, here's the outline of where the new parcel boundaries will be. And then they've also outlined the colors, or the land use colors, on those maps, so that you can see how within each of those new parcels, the land use designations or colors has been kind of reallocated and moved around.
So when I look at the parcel map, the boundaries don't appear to be changing from before and after. Is that accurate, or?
Well, and what we're doing is creating new parcels. So you start out with, you know, one big parcel, and then you're creating smaller parcels. What they've done is created these smaller parcels to match their tentative map boundaries.
So really, it's, I'm sorry, it's a comparison of 4.5C, 17, 18, and 19.
Let's see if I can pull up that. Derek, by chance, do you have that? Maybe we can do a screen share, or if on your PowerPoint presentation, did you have maybe any maps to call that out?
Are you talking to the actual parcel map or our exhibits?
Is that, what page is that, Brooke?
You're on mute, Brooke. You're still on mute, Brooke.
Oops.
There we go.
Sorry, I thought I clicked it a second time. That's I've got it as sheet 2 of 3. I don't have it necessarily marked within the staff report itself, but if you go to the exhibits, there's a title exhibit for that we would see with a parcel map. The subsequent map, this is the map right after that. This is showing basically the formation of the merger of 2 parcels into one large parcel. And then as we go to the next sheet, of parcel map 2, we're seeing the subsequent creation of the remainder parcel. And then within that, trying to see where that is. now we're seeing the formations of where our tentative maps are. So we're seeing a total of, we're taking 2 parcels, we are merging them, and then we are subdividing them into 7 parcels. That is, as Angela mentioned, it's allowed by NRS and through our code with the public hearing. The reason before that, I think, is really to avoid someone coming in and taking their parcel and doing parcel map after parcel map and avoiding a tentative map and the public hearing process. And so we've tried to have transparency in this. It was noticed within the handbook itself, clearly outlines that this is something we do. It's very similar, as Angela mentioned, to the Stonegate process that we've done there. And so the hearing really provides that ability for the public to see and understand that they're not trying to circumnavigate another process. They're really using this process to outline the tentative maps that they've created so that they can sell those is I mean, obviously the purpose, but that's the gist of what they're doing. They're merging, creating 2 parcels, and then they're subsequently creating the other parcel for the maps.
And forgive me, fellow commissioners, if I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but I always conceive that the purpose to subdivide is to sell, and you can't sell parcels subject to tentative improvements. But am I?
No, you can, I think what the difference is, so with these parcel maps, you're creating a new parcel. So they could go to the county tomorrow, not literally tomorrow, but in the next couple of weeks, because they'll have a parcel map ready to go. They could go to the county, have it recorded, and now they've created 7 new parcels. They could then sell, let's say, parcel 1 to any home builder. Let's just pick Toll Brothers. So Toll Brothers could now own parcel 1, which could have a tentative map already approved on it. So now Toll Brothers could own that tentative map. They could go through and process the tentative map and final map. That's going to take them another at least 9 months before those parcels are recorded, and they can actually build those homes on those parcels. It is a much quicker process to get through a parcel map to where you can actually record that and sell those parcels than it is to have to go through a tentative map and final map process. So that is a much more extensive process. But again, you can do it if you go through a public hearing process. You can do these parcel maps, which gives them the ability to sell these larger parcels, and they've encompassed the tentative maps within those larger boundaries, and they can sell that project to a home builder if they choose to do so.
Okay, I think I've exhausted my capability of understanding what's going on, but I have a question for Derek. But thank you, Angela and Brooke. Derek, we're losing, it looks like in this process, we're losing half an acre of open space.
Derek Kirkland, Wood Rogers. So the net loss of open space is 0.1 acres. And I can tell you as we've been going through and looking at the project as a whole, as we start to do more lotting, that's going to be gained back.
Okay, I'm looking at
You're losing like 0.1, I think 0.1 acres.
0.5. I'm looking at page 2 of the staff report that indicates that we're losing half an acre. It's 0.1% of the total.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I misspoke. Yep, sorry. It's 0.5, a total of a half an acre loss at 0.1%. And we're, when we look at the east side tentative maps that were approved, you're actually gaining back quite a bit of open space over there because of the slopes that we weren't able to build on.
Isn't there within this area? Yeah, I mean, I can't believe there isn't enough acreage to make up that half acre someplace. Can you guys commit to having us net out at 0 on open space?
Yeah, and as I mentioned, we can commit to that because as I mentioned, we're going to be, the overall development area itself is going to gain back that half acre.
So Brooke, can you condition this?
Be on this west side, but as we move as we move to other areas in the PUD, that's going to get gained back.
Yeah, Commissioner Marshall, we're looking at this as the whole of the PUD, and that's why we have that flexibility for them to allow to do that. Now, it should be noted, it's a third of this project, of almost 1,000-acre project, is devoted to open space, and so we're seeing that half-acre loss, which it's significant, but if you look at the really percentage of overall open space, it's a very small percentage. Now, as Derek said, and looking at some of the future lotting, we'd anticipate with some of the work of the 404 and the core work, and also the additional requirements that the floodplain is going to happen, that we're going to see that additional coming back over the whole of the development. And that was our goal within this, is that we're looking at the project as a whole and not one tentative map at a time, as we look at these shifts in these land uses, these underlying land uses.
So it shouldn't be a problem.
I would struggle to condition one tentative map, because it burdens that tentative map unfairly, possibly to a future tentative map that the land is given back on, if that makes sense. So, and where these could be parceled and we could have individual owners in the future, it makes it very hard. That's why I've asked the applicant to kind of keep that running tally and making sure that we're trying to stay very consistent. Open space is obviously very important, and that's one of those that we'll as we see, and if we're seeing them really start to push that 10%, that we'll obviously from a staff level want to question that and have a further analysis of why they feel that's necessary for them to do. But I would be hesitant to condition one specific parcel map or tentative map to have that, and it makes it very hard to condition an overall parcel map versus some sort of other entitlement where it's a little bit easier to condition.
I think it's
Andrew,
pretty
if
easy
you
to
have more
condition
on that.
parcel map, but I mean, we're putting conditions. We're already putting conditions of approval on it, but I'll save that for discussion. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Commissioners, other questions? Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is kind of tangential to maybe what Commissioner Marshall was talking about. Brooke, when we're seeing these, and we can use this evening as a perfect example, we saw two tentative maps, one of which, based on these parcel maps that we're seeing, has an impact on what the underlying land use is. The tentative map with the overlay extended basically single family over neighborhood commercial. And is there the ability, because I think what Commissioner Marshall is getting to is going to become maybe more of an issue as we continue in these areas where there's multiple types of underlying land use, that as a part of the tentative map review and presentation, that maybe we're identifying and addressing what we see as changes in the land use prior to this being something that's at the parcel map stage. Because I think the issues that Commissioner Marshall's raising with respect to open space, and in my mind, and this one, like neighborhood commercial, it would be, I think, incumbent upon us to look at that at the tentative map stage, because that's where we can condition. That's where we can look at it and say, hey, you're putting lots, the western edge of 19 is extending into what was classified as open space. Are we okay with that? So I guess that is a question maybe to you in terms of what you're looking at, and Derek as well from a presentation. Can that be looked at on subsequent tentative maps to be able to identify, before we're at the parcel map stage where we're looking at the accounting, but to actually say, hey, this tentative map is shifting the boundaries so that we're at a point where we can actually do something about it, as opposed to now where it's being recorded as a parcel map?
That is, yeah, certainly something we can include in the future staff reports, and also, address through the hearing itself, is keeping kind of a running tally. Now, that handbook does allow, and we have to work within the realms of that handbook, it does allow 10% and allows them to modify that. And that's largely due that they're, looking at something 50,000 feet in the air, and now they're putting it on the ground, and there are those little things. So we can certainly say, we're anticipating a impact of X loss here, in the future, or we've gained back X amount of open space on this project, right? We can certainly make sure that as we move forward, we can do that accounting so that the Planning Commission is aware of that tentative map. If you do have concerns, or if there's something, we can address that at that time.
And I appreciate that, Brooke. And I guess, Derek, I would ask the same question for you in terms of when these are being presented, is that, you're obviously looking at a much more, detailed view on this, but you're understanding where these changes are at. Is that something that you can be including on the future tentative maps that we're going to be seeing, so we can be looking at these changes with the tentative map rather than with a subsequent parcel map?
Derek Kirkland, Wood Rogers for the record. Yeah, and we can agree to put these in with the tentative maps. I think the reason you didn't see them in the previous tentative maps is because we were within that 10%. And so we were pushing and pulling based on grading, where we have drainage, where we're actually looking at drainage and doing things at, at a ground level scale rather than kind of these bubble map scales where, it's kind of more of a broad brush. But we can put these in the tentative maps. I think we would just ask, out of that kind of same token is that, we look at that within what's allowed in the PUD. But it'll give us a chance to explain why maybe we're pushing and pulling certain areas. So I definitely think that, we could put this with the tentative maps going forward.
No, and I appreciate that, because I think what we're getting to is, as Commissioner Marshall points out, starting to look at tentative or at parcel maps is not something we do, but land use is something that the Planning Commission is looking at all the time. So just to have an understanding to say, look, this is going to, we're pushing this boundary here, we're adjusting this boundary here. It would be good to have that understanding, when we're reviewing it, as opposed to now a month and a half after we looked at those tentative maps, and we're now, just seeing, yes, it's a minimal impact, but it is an impact, and it would be good to be able to understand that at the tentative map stage. So I'm not going to belabor this anymore. Both of you kind of understand where we're going, and I appreciate that. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. I have a couple quick questions. Pretty basic, I think. So Derek, what is driving this process? Why is the request being made, and what would happen? What's the default if they're not approved? Or I guess that's my first two questions. What's the alternative?
Derek Kirkland, Wood Rogers for the record. So as I mentioned, it's really just creating these, right now it's 2 large parcels that and you have 4, so you got backbone infrastructure that's going to get put in. And then you have these 2 large parcels that have 4 basically 4 approved tentative maps now on those within these mixed parcels. And then we also have the park that the master developer is eventually going to put in. So really what we're trying to do is just clean it up and basically have those village boundaries match the tentative map, so they can set a tangible parcel to a home builder that now takes on those responsibilities of that tentative map. And essentially the developer can focus on the backbone and the park, and they're the things that they need to do, and kind of let the merchant builder deal with their own parcel that also has an approved tentative map on it. To answer your second question, they weren't to be approved. I honestly don't know what that would do. I mean, you have approved tentative maps, so I don't know, other than, delaying the, how does a merchant builder come in and purchase a parcel? They would basically have to purchase a tentative map and go forward. And I think, as Angela mentioned, it just adds time to that process. And we're trying to find ways to try to get these builders to put these houses in quicker. So I think it would have a negative impact there.
Okay, so then
it's just really just a cleanup type thing, more or less. We were trying to make it complicated.
No, and I just think it's because I haven't seen this request, so I'm trying to really understand it and not overcomplicate it for myself. My next question is, for the parcels, how many tentative maps have been approved for the parcels? And are there parcels without tentative maps approved within them? And what happens to those parcels for the approval process moving forward?
Sorry, Derek Kirkland, Wood Rogers. So essentially, the parcels, so basically you have the tentative map parcels, and then the ones that are left over, basically, I mean, the master developer still retains ownership of all these parcels. And then the parcels that are remaining, the master developer still retains ownership, and they basically only sell kind of the villages. And we basically align these with the approved tentative maps. And so, you know, we could have come in and asked for these parcel maps for the entire PUD, but our thought was, you know, all this is meant to do is basically set aside the boundaries of these tentative maps, so that as they sell each village for a builder to build on, that builder has a tangible parcel with an approved tentative map. And so that was kind of the thought behind that. And as we move to the east side of the town center, we would be doing a similar thing where we come in with the tentative maps, and during that tentative map process, you would see some additional sequential parcel maps that go with those tentative maps.
Okay, that helps me understand the process a little bit more. Thank you. Commissioner, other questions? Do you guys want to move into discussion now?
Can I just ask a quick question of Carl? Carl, I just can't shake this feeling that I've read a case that basically disapproves of some kind of, I don't know whether it's sequentially or piecemealing parcel maps, or if it's a, subdivision that really whacked the local jurisdiction that was essentially trying to, work the way around the 4 unit. And if maybe I'm thinking of a California case or something, but if there, are you confident that what we're doing is illegal?
Yes, I'm confident that it's legal. I'll do some additional research, but I agree with Angela.
Further discussion, commissioners? This is really complicated for me, and it's, I'm not sure it needed to be, but it was complicated to understand.
Yeah, just on that point, I think what the staff report does is it really focuses on the kind of before and after, these maps in 4.5.d, and doesn't really get at what is happening, with the merger and subdivision. So I guess I would have really appreciated a clearer map, a before and after of what it is that we're actually approving, as opposed to the net result, or maybe both of those things. So next time we have to do this, that maybe we have a better, some sort of graphic that shows us, we're merging into, 2 into 1, and then we're, how it is the parcels are actually being manipulated. So that I think that would be useful conceptually to understand what we're doing.
Commissioners, we might be ready for a motion.
Are we making 2 motions?
I think we should make 2 motions.
Thank you. That would be very helpful.
But we need someone to make one first.
Madam Chair, just one, I guess as a question here, in terms of maybe this is for Angela, Brooke, or even Carl. So basically, again, we don't typically review parcel maps. So applying findings to this, is that why what's posted in here is essentially general approval criteria, which is something that's put over the top of essentially anything that comes before us, meaning it's just consistency with the plan and consistency with Title 18. Is that, we don't have any, there's nothing else that typically exists from an administrative standpoint or anything like that?
Sure, and I can answer that. So we have kind of two sets of findings. That first set, those are our general approval criteria, and that's for any type of, as we call it, entitlement applications. Those are 5 findings. The second set of findings is specific to sequential parcel maps, and that comes directly from what our code requires. So specific to the parcel map is those 2 findings, 1 and 2. And then just in general, looking at all development applications is our general approval criteria with those 5 findings.
Okay, thank you. Because the sequential parcel map findings are dealing with items that aren't a part of this discussion with respect to items that fall into, you know, almost code related items.
Yeah.
So it was confusing me rather than anything else. So this moving forward, these are the findings that would be placed on any parcel maps that come in as a part of this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Draculich, I'm prepared to make a motion. I just want to be clear. Am I referencing both case numbers at the same time?
No.
Okay. Okay. New to doing both at the same time. I'll let someone do it.
No, you can make a motion on 4.5 and then we can do it on 4.6 too.
We need separate motions. So one at
I
a
got
time.
it. Okay. I understand. Okay. In the matter of case number PAR 21-00034 Daybreak Plan 17-18-19 map 1, based on compliance with the applicable findings, I recommend that the Planning Commission approve the parcel maps. I can make the findings.
Do we have a second?
Commissioner Munoz, a second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Oh, sorry. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
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 All those
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Okay. So, Michelle, did you get that?
I'm assuming it's 7-0. Is that right? Did somebody say nay? Can we do a roll call vote then?
Sure. Shall we help us out? Thanks.
Yeah, please. Okay, Kathleen Taylor.
Yes.
John Marshall.
Aye.
JD Draculich.
Yes.
Peter Gower.
Yes.
Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Arthur Munoz.
Yes.
Alex Felto.
Yes.
Okay, so 7-0. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Now we can do a motion for 4.6.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Draculich, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay.
In the matter of case number PAR 21-00035 Daybreak Plan 17-18-19 map 2, based on compliance with the applicable findings, I recommend that Planning Commission approve the parcel maps. I can meet the findings.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Veltwell, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, Michelle, you want to take a vote?
Yes, please. Kathleen Taylor.
Yes.
John Marshall.
Yes.
JD Draculich.
Yes.
Peter Gower.
Yes.
Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Arthur Munoz.
Yes.
Alex Felto.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. That was a tough one, Derek. Thanks for your help. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Apologies, Commissioner Marshall. I thought you said no on one of those. I'm glad we took a roll call vote. Okay, moving on to item number 5, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report. Commissioner Johnson or
We have not had a meeting since the last Reno meeting. I think we have one scheduled for next week. I haven't seen the agenda on that yet.
Okay, thank you. Angela, item number 6, staff announcements.
Yes, just wanted to give everyone an update on the work program. I apologize. Did Jeff already fill you guys in on the city council's ranking of work program? Nope, perfect. So as you recall, Arla came to you guys probably about a month ago and gave you a list of text amendments that we need to work on post zoning code. Sustainability was one of those items. So we asked Planning Commission to rank your top. Just as a point of reference, the Planning Commission's numbers came back with affordable housing as the top choice, sustainability as the second choice, and then residential use compatibility as the third choice. So that information was forwarded to the city council, and then the city council did their own ranking. And their top three choices for future text amendments is affordable housing first. Second was appeals and related procedures. And then third was sustainability. So the good news, I think, is that between your guys' votes and city council's votes, the top three that we'll be working on this year, or two of those you agreed on. So affordable housing and sustainability made the top three. So that's, I think, good based on today's discussion about the need for sustainability. Separate from that, I did want to give you guys an update on what we are working on in terms of big picture stuff, because I think you're asking, well, why haven't we gotten to these things yet? The code was adopted in January. What have we been doing? So I did want to give you a heads up. Over the next 3 months, we have a couple big projects that are coming before you related to the master plan and the zoning code. In your meeting in June, Kelly's going to be bringing you guys a text amendment to our master plan. Once we updated the new zoning code, we now need to go back and update our master plan to make sure that all of our new zoning is in conformance with our master plan, and some other technical things that we changed in the zoning code that now changes our master plan. So that's going to be coming to you guys, I think, the next meeting, the June 3rd meeting. We also have the Mortensen-Garson Overlay District text amendment. That was something that City Council initiated back in January of 2020. We have been working with a stakeholder group that includes property owners and Verdi residents. And so we will be bringing that to you guys. I think that'll probably be in front of you in July. And that's basically a cleanup of all the maps and some of the discussions we've been having over all the last few projects that you guys have seen in the Verdi area. So we will make sure that our zoning code is consistent and cleans up some of the questions that we've had as part of those development projects. We also have packaged alcohol. We are working with our business license team and our planning team to update that. We're in the process of reaching out to stakeholders now. We currently actually have a moratorium on new businesses that want to sell packaged liquor. So that is something that it's been going on for probably 2.5 years. And so we're at the end now, and you guys will be voting on that first for any changes to Title 18, and then that will go to City Council. And then the next one that we're also working on is what we call our 6-month update to the zoning code. You know, we adopted the code in January, and so we've been using it for the last 4 months, and we found a number of errors. So there's things that are just typo errors, things that were written incorrectly, like we still have references to special use permits, which are now called conditional use permits. So just a lot of things that we didn't catch before. Some of the bigger things we caught, we said, oops, we actually left some big things out of the zoning code that we didn't mean to leave out, related to our skyways design, for instance. We had this whole section from our old zoning code on skyways regulations, and somehow a lot of that did not get bumped over. So luckily we haven't had a skyway project come forward, but we're going to be cleaning that up and bringing all that same language back and carrying that forward. So those kinds of things, I think we have about 50 items on our checklist. So that will be coming to you guys probably in July as well. So a lot of big stuff going on. Once we get through that next step, then we're going to hit those top 3 text amendments that you and council voted on. So you will be seeing some stakeholder meetings probably this fall. We'll be including you guys in those discussions and moving those forward. The other big thing is COVID. Starting this week, we opened up City Hall to the public. Starting June 1st, we are going live in-person public meetings. So your next Planning Commission meeting, which is scheduled on a Thursday, not a Wednesday, Thursday, June 3rd, will be live in public at the chambers. no more Zoom meetings. We're not doing a mix between Zoom and live. It is 100% live. So we'll get to see each other again, and looking forward to seeing you all then. Our first live meeting is actually going to be the day before Wednesday City Council meeting. So assuming everything goes okay with that meeting, we will also be live again, assuming there's no stuff. I mean, you guys have all seen what's happened with the Washoe County School District and some of their in-person meetings. We want to maintain protocol and you know, keep our meetings running smoothly. So Chairwoman Taylor, you're going to have a fun first meeting when we come back in June.
What could possibly go wrong?
But we are very, very excited to be able to have in-person meetings again. And I'm sure our planning commission's meetings will run smoothly. We do have a couple of big items scheduled for that June 3rd meeting. So I anticipate we're going to have a fairly large crowd from the public as well. So bear with us as we're trying to kind of work through, you know, the mask or no mask and social distancing and all those requirements, just in accordance with the governor's regulations. So that is it.
Thank you, Angela. Let's see, item number 7, Commissioner's suggestion for future agenda items.
I have one, but it requires Commissioner Velto to turn off his camera. You need to help me out here, Alex. So I think it's a requirement that any picture that a commissioner puts up has to show them to be at least 18 years old.
I was 17 and a half in that photo. Thank you very much. Knocking on 18-year-old's door.
Updated, man.
You know, I was trying to figure out how to do that during this meeting. I tried to upload multiple photos. Didn't make it work. It did not work.
You just gotta take from your profiles, you know.
Why don't you ask Commissioner Marshall if he has an extra one, and then you can
You guys want to look that old.
This photo is mine. Exactly. That's great idea.
Item number 8, public comment. Michelle, do we have any public comment?
I did not receive any item or public comment for this item.
Okay, we will close public comment and move on to item number 9, adjournment.
So moved.
Okay, good night, everybody.
Thank
you.
Good night. Thank
Night.
you.
See you.
Arthur.
Congratulations.
Yeah, good luck out there.
Congratulations, Arthur.
You're a brave soul.
Yeah.